Hey everybody, this is Necromedes and welcome to the first episode of my new series Darksun Studios. Now, first thing I'm going to start off with is a few tutorial videos of your basics on how to sprite things. Pixel art, that sort of stuff. Now, my videos are probably going to focus around mainly RPG Maker, VX, or VX Ace, and Game Maker. Those are really the only two engines that I mess around with. And we're just going to start with something fairly basic, and we'll go into more advanced stuff in some of the further in videos. What we're going to start with right now is glow effects. Now, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is some of the basic core rules of pixel art. Basically on how to set something up. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to download paint.net. That is what I recommend. You can use Microsoft Paint or something like that. I highly don't advise it though, because Microsoft Paint is so limited. Paint.net gives you so many more options, and if you're using MS Paint, you're not going to have access to the effects tab for blurs, distortions, glow effects, that sort of stuff. So, first thing you want to do is get Paint.net, and once you've done that, we'll go ahead and get into some of the more advanced stuff. But right now, we're just going to go with your basic glow effects. Now, first thing to keep in mind is, for a basic sprite, like your average sized characters in RPG Maker, VX, and VX Ace, the size in pixels is 32 by 32 for one panel of the sprite sheet. And a sprite sheet is comprised of a 3 by 4 square. And that's 3 squares across, 4 squares down. So we're not going to worry about putting together an entire sprite sheet right now. What we're going to be working with is just a single panel. So click on New, and your width is to be 32, and your height is to be 32. And make sure it's pixels and not inches, otherwise that's really going to mess things up. Hit OK, and this tiny little square down here is what you got to work with. Now, there are two tools that you can use in Paint.net that makes your work a lot easier, in my opinion. You've got your ruler up here, which helps you to keep track of where exactly your mouse pointer is. And then you've got your grid, which also, once again, helps you to keep track of where you're placing your pixel. Because that's what pixel art is all about. It's painting something pixel by pixel. Now, you can use other tools for it, of course, but for the most part, pixel art is just that, and that's why it's called pixel art. You're doing it pixel by pixel by pixel. Sometimes you lose strings and whatnot, but we're not going to worry about that. And another thing that's good about Paint.net is it has unlimited undo options. With Microsoft Paint, you can only undo up to a certain point before it runs out of memory. Paint.net, however, runs off of your computer's memory, or RAM. And as long as you've got enough memory in your computer, you can undo as many times as you want. Undo, redo, whatever. So, I'm just going to give you the basics on a glow effect. So, let's say you want to make a save point that looks a little bit flashy in your game, and you want it to glow. So, let's go with just your basic, we'll go with a green ball. So, down here on your color wheel, you can use the right right and left mouse buttons to choose which side of the mouse that you want to use. I thought you could. In any case, secondary is your right mouse button, primary is your first mouse button. And that's left and right, of course. But in any case, right now, we're just going to worry about the left mouse button, or your primary color. You want to select your ellipse, is what it's called. Zoom in a little bit closer here. Not that close. And we're just going to make a basic circle. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you're going to want this fairly well centered. So something you can do is if you can keep track of all the notches on the ruler, excellent, but the center of the sheet is 16 pixels in. I usually just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's your center. Just delete all of that. And let me fix this real fast. Get rid of that. This will help you to keep track of the center of your sprite panel, because otherwise it's going to be slightly off center and it's not going to look right in game. So just go with your ellipse, and you may have to play around with this a little bit to find the exact center of where you want your sprite or orb in this case to be. And it may be off by a little bit. We're not going to really worry about it too much right now, but that's essentially the idea of it. So then let's fill all of this in the center with the bucket fill and the pencil. Doesn't matter if it's a little off color on the edges. Okay, so there's your ball. Now, something else that I want to point out is your select tool. I know I told you this is all about spriting, but I'm also wanting to make sure that you understand how things work on paint.net, so that you're not fumbling around and getting a headache from trying to figure out how to work it. Normally, you can select something in, for instance, Microsoft Paint, and then you can automatically move it around just by clicking on it. But as you can see, if you try to do that here, it just makes a new box. That is because you actually have to select the Move Selected Pixels tool. You do that, and you can move it around like so. Just trying to find a semi-center spot. You can see it over here on the layers, and that kind of gives you a better idea of where exactly it will be. I think right there should look fine. Deselect that. Fill this back in. Now you may be wondering what was up with the checker pattern. I'll show you again. This here. This means that the white is opaque. And if you don't know what opaque means, it means that it's a solid color. Which means that if you were to import this directly into RPG Maker, it's going to be a white block with a green circle in it moving around on the screen. We don't want that. So you can actually delete the white itself, and anything that is this checker pattern is transparent, which means it will not show up in the engine, and only the opaque colors like the circle and whatnot will show up. That's something else that you can't do with Microsoft Paint. Now you may be thinking, well, what's the deal with getting rid of all this white then? Do you expect me to go through and take it out chunk by chunk and whatnot? No. That's another great thing about paint.net, is the magic wand tool. You can take the magic wand and click any object, or just about any object, and it will select only that and nothing else. Anything of that color. Which means right now the white has been selected, and you can just delete that, leaving just the circle. Very handy in my opinion. So now we've got the circle, and now we want to make it glow. Well, first things first, we don't want just a green ball floating there that's glowing. It's going to look really tacky and it's not going to look right. We want it to look like it's actually a light. So, I'm going to explain layers to you real fast. What layers do is it allows you to work with individual pieces of a picture, or pixel art in this case, and anything that you do will only affect that layer. It's kind of like a pop-up book in a sense. You know how a pop-up book is like layers on top of each other, and when you open it up it makes a picture? That's essentially the same thing. So what we want to do is add a new layer. This is layer 2, and let's drop this layer down here. You always want your primary base to be at the top, or in this case the background, and then layer it from there. So with layer 2 selected, let's get the paintbrush tool. And you can see here there's a little circle, and you can adjust the size of that circle however you need to. We're only going to use maybe a 5. Yeah, a 5 should do it. And we're going to put a white center to this. Now you may be wondering, well, where's the white? I can't see it. Like I said, the layers stack on top of each other. So right now the green is on top. But if you move this back down, you can see the white. You can play around with the layers as you go through. You're probably going to have to, actually. Okay, so we've got a white center. Now what you want to do is you want to... see, I already made a mistake. See, I added that onto the green layer. Let's move this back up. With the white layer selected, you can go ahead and put it on there. There we go. Much better. Okay, now what you want to do is with the little white ball layer, or layer 2 selected, go into Effects, go into Blurs, Gaussian Blur. Click on that. And you see it fades out the edges of it and kind of gives it a more of a radiant look. You can use the slider to change it back and forth, or you can use the arrows. We're only really going to use a radius of 2 to soften the edges around. Now what you want to do is you want to go into Effects, Photo, Glow. This is where it gets interesting. You've got your radius, which is how bright the color is. See, if you bring it all the way down to 1, it's kind of darkened around the edges, like it's a dimmer light. But the more you bring it up, you can if you look real closely, you can actually see it moving through the green ball. And the brightness is the actual brightness of the light. So we've got that. And the contrast is what hue it's at. I'm sure I'm getting this terminology wrong. I'm sorry if I am, but that's how it works in my head. Just kind of think of it as the knobs on your TV that you used to play around with all the time. We're really only going to mess with the brightness and the radius. We're going to leave the radius down to 1 and the contrast at -100. So that way it kind of looks like it's glowing in the center there. And these do stack, so if you need to, you can add multiple layers onto it. For instance, I'll show you again. Go to glow. You can change it further. But actually we're going to go ahead and leave a second layer of the glow on it. There we go. So you got your little light effect in the center. Now you may be thinking to yourself, okay, well, the center's glowing, what about the rest of it? I'm going to add a black background to this, to the first one, so that you can see this a little bit better. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to add yet another layer to it. Bring that up to the top so it has priority. Use your ellipse again. And we're going to put, that's too thick. We're going to put a white circle in there. And we're also going to use the eyedropper tool here to select the green again. There we go. And in the third layer, we are also going to put a ring of green in here as well. And it's going to be a little bit confusing because you can't see it on the green background. And you may be thinking, well, what's the point of that? It'll make sense, trust me, because now you've got the white ring here on the third layer as well as a green ring on the inside. So now go to Effects, Blurs, Gaussian Blur. We're going to make it a 5. And then we go to Photo, Glow. Tinker around with this a little bit. Give it a nice glowing color. Glowing color, that didn't really make sense now, did it? Okay, that looks about right. Now you may be thinking, okay, well, that's all well and good, but you can still see the blocky outline of it. That's perfectly fine, because now you can go back to this, the background, and you can do the same thing with it. Slide this back down so you can see all of it. Select the background, blur, Gaussian blur. We're going to leave that at a 5 because that looks pretty good. We're going to go Photo, Glow. And we're going to set it up like so. And there you have it. You now have a glowing ball. And the more you zoom out, the better it looks. I mean, in my opinion, it looks pretty darn good. So now you could put this into a sprite sheet and plunk it down to your game and have a nice glowing green ball there for your save point or whatever else it may be that you're trying to make. So there's your glow effect. Hopefully this has been helpful to you, and be sure to keep an eye out for the rest of my videos. My next one, I'll probably be showing you how to put together a sprite sheet, and how to make it look correct in RPG Maker. Have a good day or night or whatever you're having right now, and I'll see you next time.